Hello and welcome to this panel on AI and machine learning and the key to advanced analytics insights. My name is Adam Mayer, I'm from Qlik, and you're joining us here live in the middle of Big Data London. Some 2,000 to 3,000 people are here, all talking about data and the hot topic of AI. So I'm really pleased here to be joined by a really esteemed external panel of people that's going to help me talk about the role of AI in analytics. So maybe just do a quick introduction, name and where you come from.
Okay, so I'm Matthew Bayfield, I'm the Chief Exec of Parity. We're here today very much representing the people in AI, the folk that actually make it happen.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Good afternoon guys, my name's Tristan Blakely. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for a company called Second Sight. We're a global business that's really helping large enterprise to understand what data it has and what data is valuable and what data is worthless.
Okay. Excellent.
Fantastic, thank you Adam. Sean Price, and it's great to be here. I work as an Industry Solutions Director for Qlik.
Yep.
Previous to that, I worked in Avon and Somerset Police for 20 years, where we've been pioneering predictive analytics to the masses, industrialising it. Yeah, so I bring that experience here today to discuss and pull apart, really. Yep.
Excellent, that's quite a good starting point, because if you think about the kind of maturity level of analytics, if you just start there first in terms of, initially it was all about looking at what has happened and then trying to understand why it's happened, and then we're now in that kind of maturity level, or most organizations are trying to reach what is going to happen and you know, how can we make it happen, that kind of stuff. So in the realms of predictive stuff, let's go straight to the chase. I know you've got a great real world example of predictive analytics using AI from your background in Avon and Police, Somerset Police. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of the worst moments when you could wake up in the morning is when you review cases overnight, the incident report, to see what happened. So, you know, thankfully we don't get too many of them, but on one occasion, going back a few years, woke up to a terrible murder where a vulnerable person in the community was horribly murdered, Bijan Ibrahimi, and that case had a huge number of failings. It was a bias, racism involved in the case, and very much the case was a situation where risk was being isolated in the local policing area, the dots weren't being joined up, the visibility and governance across the organisation wasn't there around that case, and we turned to data. We said, you know, can data help solve and prevent a terrible murder like that happening again in the future? We call it learning the lessons, and a lot of organisations do that. So what was unique about this, we started our journey on predictive modelling. We industrialised modelling from that point, and we built a model to understand high risk and vulnerable people in the community. Not only high risk, but escalation in risk. Yeah. So the model was churning away, looking to say, actually, there's a level of risk here and an escalation of risk that you need to know about. Yeah, it's, you know, when you're talking about potentially tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people with vulnerabilities in a community, yeah, humans just can't do it by themselves. They miss things.
Actually, can I ask
a
question
of course,
at that point? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that immediately leaps out to me, is this driven by a lack of resourcing, we don't have enough humans who can do it, or is it driven by a machine can do it better?
Yeah, I think firstly a machine can do it better.
Yeah.
The technology now at this point is so good, it outmaneuvers a human doing all the legwork, okay, around modelling and risk scoring.
Yeah.
What actually you cannot ever have the amount of resource to individually review every single vulnerable person every day. It's just human not possible, however much resource you've got. And of course, public sector, for example, policing where I came from, huge amounts of budget cuts, Avon Somerset Police, 600 fewer less officers to keep you safe. Yeah. So, you know, we turn to technology to solve that.
I think it's a really interesting point from the perspective. We do a lot of work in public sector, and often it's driven by, we don't have the people. 600 fewer police, X hundred fewer people in every service line. And so that then leads the general public to respond with getting rid of more people by bringing in AI.
Yeah,
and
it's efficiency, you know, always got saving life and efficiency.
It's also quite a dual role with AI, isn't it? Because exactly that. A lot of people think AI is going to replace jobs, and we see it very much as a kind of a tight collaboration between machine intelligence and human intuition. So like in your case, it's machines can really delve through vast amounts of information.
It's a tool, right?
It's a tool, right?
Yeah.
But it's the humans that kind of have to make the decisions, and we don't ever really want to replace them. So it's very much a case of augmented intelligence, isn't it?
And in this case, professional judgment always sits on top of that.
Yep.
It's another information source that's coming in to help the officer or analyst make those decisions. And of course, that person, retrospectively run, was at the top of the model score, and escalating in risk. But the powerful bit about this was we saw lots of other people that were showing similar characteristics of vulnerability, and of course, modelling is useless without action. So we built that into the tasking process. Cops went out, safeguarded those individuals, and we feel now, a couple of years or so on, that model is running on phones, on mobile phones, literally scoring, helping officers understand, see those issues, and they're going out safeguarding. So again, transforming ways of working in action using predictive stuff. Of course, there's lots of issues in there around, well, what about security of information? What about the bias?
Well, you touched on it. You touched on a couple of points there. I think that the looking at it in terms of how the human intervention sits across the data, in terms of where we're talking about building models that are somewhat black boxes at times. So understanding the underlying technology or the concept that sits underneath that model, and having the human augment the technology that's then being deployed into into an environment like you've just kind of mentioned there, or into financial services or insurance, for instance. What it points at for us is the underlying asset being the data, and obviously the risk that the business is potentially exposed to, and how we can measure that risk.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And from setting out on this project that we did, I think the bias, the security of the information was at the forefront. What we was really good at looking was, how is it traditionally? Where's the bias in the traditional processes and methods that policing would use? So the finger in the air, we think that's the best person to go and tackle or focus our energies on, or intelligence on. Actually, we found that the modelling challenged those professional judgments and the traditional ways of working. It provided a balance to some of that thinking, and it showed things that we thought, do you know what? We need to change a culture about how information's being used. And that was the powerful bit. Bias is auditable in systems. People's different, but bias is auditable in systems. Those models, you can have precision, recall, accuracy of the models, measure it daily.
And that requires quite a high skill set, doesn't it?
High skill set.
In terms of, you mentioned about trust of the data, but also in terms of the skills in actually modelling the data, is really quite important as well.
Shortage.
I think,
Matthew, you got to...
I think, obviously that's our business. We find people who help people to do this stuff, right? And we've probably got one of the largest networks in the UK of experts that deliver this type of stuff, right? But I think that the two things that leapt out at me in terms of the conversation flow, right? One is the communication piece about this, particularly when you're talking about frontline service position. As soon as you're changing the way that a policeman arrives at the door, an ambulance arrives at your house, a fireman puts out a fire, the communication angle of the AI is paramount in people's minds, because it will get the finger pointed at it if they don't get the service they like. So there's a communication piece that leaps out at me, which ties back into the people piece. So I have a saying, and it's really glib, and we're all experts and friends, right? But if AI has the power to be superhuman, it can be brighter and better than humans. But right now it's quite nascent, it's quite young, it's like a child. Right? So let's say it's a 3-year-old, a superhuman 3-year-old. Who do you want raising that 3-year-old?
Exactly.
Because right now it's being raised by a tiny proportion of the planet Earth. Predominantly young 20-something males.
That's really interesting. Really interesting ethical dilemma being raised. Not there's anything wrong with young 27 males, by the way, but
well, think about without
prime, of course,
without putting the old diversity label on everything that we could talk about. Where are the artists? And I'm not just talking about quota filling here. I'm talking about a breadth of thinking. Where are the philosophers? Where are the people who are going to bring into existence models that we all feel comfortable with, that are going to change the way real stuff happens in our lives.
How does that kind of, vast array of influence get brought into the process?
Yeah, so right now, people would go out with a list of tasks to do. Can I get someone who can do my data munging? Can I get someone to do my ETL? Can I get somebody who can build me a model? List of tasks to do. What there isn't enough focus on is the output. There isn't enough focus on what's the delivery output and the impact it's going to have, because I then need to understand who I need to put on it.
Yeah, I think you're right, and just thinking about how some of those questions around organisations being responsible to recruit the right people, a diverse workforce, understand how to do it properly, all those great concepts of data science, it really challenges our current strategy, both in the private and the public sector space, because they're a bit slow, public sector a bit slow to catch up on the strategy around that. Forces, everyone's going off and doing things, healthcare, all doing stuff, but the policy and that confidence around some of that there. In my force, where I worked, we'd have an ethics committee. We started with bringing people into challenge, a bit like what we're doing here today, and what you quite absolutely rightly did was point out what are some of those issues that you need to factor in doing your big data program in terms of that predictive analytics. And we got a huge value from having a very open public-based ethics committee helping shape, challenge how we're doing things, and like for example, moving race from a modelling. Removing that, but can be quite simply achieved.
Whereas from a pure analytics point of view, that's probably a key variable. So if you approach that from a very task-orientated, can I make this a best fit possible solution, it's going to be up near the top. And actually, the public sector's got a fair amount to teach the private sector in a broad approach to diversity and ethics.
Absolutely.
And I think what we also did was part of the ethics committee positioning of what recommendation, what we should do, is make all the model scoring very visible to the people using it in the organisation as well. So we've got some models where that's showing the precision and recall, the accuracy of it basically. So again, that's all transparency, all auditable. So
it brings in that trust in the data.
Trust,
we're talking about how you secure it, but also
it's not 100% side of things. There's no 100% accurate model.
To your point, Jordan. To your point, you like that analogy of AI in its kind of maturity level when we looked at analytics, very much a kind of 3-5-year-old child. And I always equate to that when you talk about models, is you wouldn't just put a 5-year-old in a library and say, learn, and then come up. So like the building around models is important.
The supervision that goes with that.
Exactly, And one thing that sort of struck into my mind is when you talked about the modeling and actually putting it into the hands of the users where it becomes most powerful, people who need it the most. Data literacy's got to be an important part as well. I know we're talking about analytics, but in order to understand analytics and really have that trust and understand the data and be confident with it as well. Because one of the we talk about AI being, generally most people tend to think of it as a scary thing. It needs ethics, it needs control around it. But at the same time, it can do some great things as well. Don't we? We talked about that prime example there, and there's lots of industries now looking at how they can use the
reduction in resource,
to make life easier, to help us more intelligent. I work in marketing, I need all the help I can get to be intelligent. So
it's a really good point, and data literacy side is so important. So good example of that. When we first did the modelling on our journey, because modelling is a journey, isn't it? When we first did it, we just gave people risk scores. This is a person's risk. You can imagine how that landed in the organisation. Pretty flat. Because there was no context, there was no ability to understand challenge, balance. So our lessons learned from there was that actually we needed to visually build out the storyboard around the predictive scoring. So you can imagine what they've now got is this richness of multiple data sources coming in to support a risk scoring process.
I'd be really interested to see whether your process for applying that risk analysis in society is a similar way that we would apply it to data, because we look at how where is the risk in data itself, and obviously, as we know, you need a vast amount of data in terms of how in terms of building these models, training, testing the models, for example. It'd be interested to look at that from a sensitivity and risk aspect.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the different ways of doing the predictive modelling, the here and now. So yes, you've got your hardcore data science approaches, where it all depends on how much money is attached to these things. It might be a team of 50, 20, the huge public sector. From where I come from, we don't have that. So we've moved to the integrated sort of modelling, sort of like the data robot style, which is amazing. Because it allows you to do great modelling at a cost which is accessible.
So can I push back on that? Go on, bit of controversy. So I wandered around today, as I'm sure you all have, right? 99.9% of people are here selling a simplified solution
to data science.
AI for dummies, right? Plug and play, API, put it in, push a button, how it comes to response, right?
You still need to be really good at data prep, though.
Exactly, and I think the bit that we're teetering towards is the introduction of an advanced technology into an unskilled workforce.
Yes.
Education.
What are the implications of that? Where's the learning, the development, the organizational design that says, I've just given you the ability to direct a police force to somebody's front door, and actually, up until yesterday, you'd never even looked at a database.
And you're absolutely right. And that is where, again, what the scale or breadth of what you do, but yes, you recruit resource correctly to the level of, if you're doing an integrated data robot style, then this is the type of resource and skill levels you need. You need the leadership in the organization. The top person, who's often the data controller in the organization, they need to understand as much about the bias and predictive modeling as your BI manager.
It's a really interesting reflection of where the world is at, though. Just this little microcosm when you walk, you can see that people want it to be simple. They desperately want a lovely looking dashboard, probably with a big red button. Go, stop. And it says a lot about our desire to dumb this stuff down, to simplify this to the point where any common user can use it. And I wonder, going slightly off track, if that then creates a bit of a them and us divide. There are those who work behind the scenes and understand how that stuff was built, and there are the end users, which is probably a growing community, who are just like, I just trust it. Like you said earlier, I just trust it because it works.
I think I was going to say that mirror kind of analogy as well, is in order to sort of make anything adaptable and adopted to the masses, it has to be simple, right? Especially when you're dealing with folks in marketing. But there is always behind the mirror, you need to have the controls in place, you need to have people who understand about the trust and security, and then there's that level of being transparent about it, and that's always quite a
I think it's a bit on those points. I think it's an interesting shift. So we're seeing this, as I say again, the data robot, the Qlik style, AI type cognitive stuff all appearing, and other vendors around the hall, of course. But what we're seeing is that with data scientists, actually there's a lot hidden. How are they operate? You've got this culture of actually, I'm a data scientist, and I think we really need to push the transparency and visibility that some of our third-party tools provide. They do provide that auditable transparency in the data science field as well. But thinking of the future, where we are now, you're probably having natural language processing of AI capabilities where you're saying, look, build me a model on my churn rate today, please. And it'll do it for you. And then we need to make sure that all that security, all of the ethics and governance around was working properly. That's where we're going to be, isn't it? 3 years' time, everything's going to be natural language.
And I think on the skills point, data scientists. What the hell's a data scientist? Anyone? Anyone?
Yeah, many things.
And I have seen, I've just run some analysis on it yesterday, I have seen a fractal of the job title. So up until 3 years ago, it was like the best paid job per day, right? If you're on a contract rate, stick data scientist on your CV, quids in. It's now split and fragmented into about 6 or 7 really niche job titles. And the rates go up. And I think what we're seeing is this, again, an organization will start with a certain level of understanding, and it will say, we need a data person. And up in comes the data scientist, and that person goes, well, you've got no actual information, you've got nothing I can build it on, you've got no strategy, you've got no governance, and then suddenly you end up with this.
Is that not, though, where obviously the leveraging data within a business now is obviously getting more and more mature.
Yeah.
And when we go off into those different tracks, like your statistical guys, your guys that are able to build out those models, deploy them into production.
The business analyst role.
Yeah, I guess there's a change of, the data science role is no longer under one umbrella, right? It's it's multifaceted.
It needs to be exposed to the business, and they need to wear many hats on it. That's
absolutely.
I was just thinking the role of the CDO is obviously, and CIOs are going to be more and more important. That's quite paramount when you see it here as well in terms of getting the right skill sets in. One example, I know I'm the host, but one example that suddenly sprung to mind that I'm aware of in terms of that transparency and having the data scientists exposed to the rest of the team is in healthcare. Again, there's a NHS trust called Wright and Wigton Lee.
Right.
And they take, and a lot of NH trusts are doing this now, they take that ward to board or board to ward kind of process, and in WWL in particularly, their BI team is actually made up of everyone, including the ward nurses, they bring cleaners in, and then they can actually bring analytics in, into the hospitals where decisions need to be made in a timely manner. And one of the AI examples they've got there is in order to decrease wait time in the A&E area, is they've kind of got, as the chief exec calls it, a weather forecast predictability. That's done through some integration, but that allows them to really impact patient care and make sure they've got enough staff so people can be turned around really quickly. And they're quite a good success story because they've seen themselves go right up to the higher rankings from quite a bottom. So
have you found at Qlik that your buying audience has changed quite a lot?
Yes. Yeah.
Like the people who actually come to you now for, whereas perhaps maybe 10 years ago it would have been a very niche subset, right?
Predominantly IT. You had the role of the BI was very much tucked away, hidden away in the corner, and then struggling to find the data, struggling to make use of it. And it was very much a them and us divide between the analyst and the user. But now we're hitting this kind of like the third generation of BI, as we like to call it. You're hitting this democratization of data. To your point, we've got this expanse of data around. It's about putting the right tools in place, but also the education as well to make sure you get access to that data. Simplify it to a degree to increase that adoption, but to make sure that when you are simplifying it behind the scenes, you've got that right level of control, I suppose. That's where we want. And I think today we are pretty much in its adolescence, in its infancy. Next couple of years it will probably be a stroppy teenager. Why do I need to do this? I don't know. But
it's when it turns around and tells you they can do it better than you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when we're all in trouble.
And to that point, though, I mean, just if I can go round the horn, as it were, in terms of your thoughts, in terms of where are we going in the next couple of years, in terms of AI as a technology, but also if we can narrow it down to sort of like in its role in the analytics space. How it could potentially help.
I think specifically around analytics, there's a lot of open source, random forests, to get a bit technical, where people are now able to lift and shift the specific analytic techniques into their stack really easily. And I really like that, right? As somebody, going back 25 years, who used to mess about with regressions and things like that, you were in a little silo, right? And you just had your set and you didn't know if it was a reliable set, and now there's a huge plethora of forum type events where you can really suck the learning and stand on shoulders of other people. A lot of that, though, I've seen is driven by the big social tech companies, right? And they have an ambition, they have an agenda, and it doesn't fit 60% of my client base in the public sector.
Right.
So it's trying to see, do we need to be verticalized in analytics? No. Because it's been horizontal for years, right? If you're an analyst, you're an analyst. It doesn't really matter what you're looking at.
Do you see that trend changing then?
I think I do. I think I see that there's a business acumen layer that starts to address the bias in the modeling. And you can only get there if you've understood the business. And by business, I mean that in the broadest sense, from service provision through to selling more boxes.
Broadest sense of the data science. Data science isn't coding, it's that broadest business skill set as well. So I mean,
domain experience, subject matter expertise in that kind of vertical that you're describing there, as well as how the supply chains of information move across the enterprise. So understanding, how much demand is being put across that data by the business. If you can really understand that, then potentially you can understand where to focus first on those kind of analytical use cases.
And also I think that, as we've said here, it's every function uses data. If you work in finance, if you work in marketing, even marketing, as you keep saying, if you work in supply chain, you're using data, and they're all looking for ways to make that a simplified process. So the dissemination of that data knowledge, how do you raise the bar? Rather than dumb it down, how do you raise the bar?
Yeah, definitely, and I think education is a key thing there, as it is. Technology can get you so far, it's definitely not the answer to everything, but it's education responsibility.
Coming from the business side, really resonates that with me. From the technology side, things are moving so fast, and I think business can't keep up with basic analytics, let alone predictive analytics. So, leaders in organisations really need to up their game. So, call out to any leader out there. If you don't really get it, and you're not strategically thinking it's an imperative, then we need to up the game a bit. And self-reflect. I did when I was in policing. I said we got to do this, and I think people have got to get on that and start that journey, because it is a journey, predictive modelling.
Definitely.
Second thing, the integration of data, the movement of data. We've got a hybrid economy. We've got stuff on the cloud. We've got stuff on site. We've got stuff everywhere. We might even have stuff on the moon. Who knows? But what we need is flexible technology to make use of all of that, don't we?
And also understand what data you do have, because what we find a lot of the time is most organisations really don't know what data they do have, right?
No.
So the exposure that puts them in terms of the exposure to risk that creates is immense.
Absolutely.
Definitely. In the healthcare, we use potentially hundreds of systems, clinical systems, and capturing latent information and
power.
power.
Of growth, which is stunning, right? Like, so 30 years ago, the amount of data in the NHS was doubling at a rate of once every 10 years or something.
It's
now predicted to double at a rate of every 70 days.
And how much are we exploiting strategically or tactically? And that's where the readmission risk. One predictive model that looks to understand readmission risk, the impact of that on the patient and the resourcing demand. Why isn't everyone doing it? And I think even I see it in private companies and public sector space, when we say how many people are really deploying predictive analytics, it's very, very few. And I just don't get it. And I think, we, again, it's about the leaders. We've got to help people understand how to deliver those solutions really well. It's not about selling technology. This is about selling outcomes for the public that we all, and our communities that we all thrive and hopefully thrive and exist in, isn't it? So we all need that
maybe
passion,
you're just there demonstrating a skill that's quite rare, right? Which is that somebody who understands analytics invariably doesn't have the translation layer to be able to explain it to a business, right?
Is that where the skill set pit?
Right. I don't know about your experience, but I find those kind of characters very rarely. Somebody who would grasp at a very technical level the data position, the analytics position, the business requirement, and have the communication skills to actually influence the top table to make a decision.
It's definitely a rare breed.
Absolutely. I think I think you're at 100% where we are now. I think if we were to look forward a little bit more in the future, so we're seeing in our space where you're automating all the coding and scripting for moving data. Okay, so that ETL data integration piece, so you're shifting data really quickly to the web or to warehouses or to whatever, analytics ready, understanding data quality. You then cataloging data, so you've got data governance, data security. Well, a lot of that can be automated, so people are shopping marting the data, stuff like that, and then they're consuming it. And if we think, and if you were to say to me, well, where do you think we're going to be? I think, and you'll come back and you may think I'm wrong, but I think in probably 5 years time, this has been recorded probably, isn't it? 5 years time.
Come back in 5 years time.
5 years time, we'll be building models through natural language processing with all that security, governance, churn. The data prep will probably be a different issue, but that's my view. Natural language processing, data modeling. So it's an extension of like a data roboting style. That's my view. But
well, if we're all going for big old future gazing, I think that the skill sets required will change dramatically, particularly as software becomes far more accessible to those who find it alienating today. And at that point, you'll see a dramatic shift in what the outcomes are we're trying to achieve. Because our thinking today is limited by outcome-driven targets. A lot of analysts are really comfortable with ones and zeros. Did it happen, did it not happen?
Yeah.
Right, black and white.
Yeah.
As soon as you go to a grayscale and you look at some range of outcomes,
yeah.
it all starts to fall down. But there are other walks of life that are really comfortable with that kind of thought process, but they haven't got the tools to be able to do it. So imagine how that would look in the future when you've got people who are trying to achieve outcomes that aren't just this or this, they're not binary.
Yeah.
And they've got a whole scale of outcomes, right? So that's where I think that our whole sector has undergone ridiculous growth and continues to undergo ridiculous growth. But the next evolution for me is the types of characters that are playing in our space.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Well, for us, I think the future of our business and really what we're obsessed over is how we can introduce the chief financial officer into this conversation. Right. So where we're talking about the execs, obviously the CEO and obviously the Office of Data, the CDOs, how do we bring the CFO in and really look at data as both an asset and a liability? Fundamentally, how can we apply accounting principles to data, how we can value, or evaluate and then provide a valuation on that data, and then how can we get it onto the balance sheet? Right. So ultimately then does business start to really understand that actually to apply artificial intelligence and machine learning modeling to our underlying asset, which is the data, understanding and perceiving it as having real intrinsic value, and obviously risk as well.
And a cost to maintain, a cost to capture.
There you go. Yeah. And then for us, we feel that becomes part of a business function as opposed to an artifact of everything that's going on in the operation.
Completely agree.
That's part of that complete overview of the entire business, as it were. Absolutely, so you've got that full breadth of knowledge you're working on. And that actually is important for AI technologies to work on top as well. Making sure they're not just working on partial subsets of data, but the entire full breadth. That's a really good point. So. We've covered a lot of ground here, right? So if I can sort of try and summarize, we've had some really powerful examples of AI in action today, actually, how that can affect lives. Yep. That then sped on to a kind of discussion around the whole ethics around how you actually build the models around AI, the skill sets that are required, where we are in the maturity of it, the whole kind of compliance side of things, the security and compliance. We didn't even talk about GDPR. It's amazing. But obviously, but that was in there as well. But that needs to be in there. And we talked about a little bit of prediction about where we think it's going. I mean, ultimately, you've got to cover, I think, that full breadth of skills, from the user to the people that model it to the people that need to understand it and make decisions. So maybe if I just go around the horn again, just to summarize it and wrap up in terms of any key takeaways you want the viewers and the listeners to take away from this. I'll just give you a couple.
Adam?
I'll go Sean first, couple of minutes, and then go around.
So I think the first thing I would say is that people need to get on that journey. Mm-hmm. Do not be afraid to dip your toe in and start exploring with the organization and collaboration with recruiters, with technology partners, with academia, with other peers in the industry. Do not be afraid to start that process. Leadership, empower, educate, get our top leaders really understanding about how to deliver this stuff, because it is vital. Create some wow about, build some models, create some wow about how it will change outcomes and processes. Take away the ethics and the governance. Is as serious as anything, but it's an enabler and not a blocker. Get those people on board, get the information commissioner in, say, come and have a look what we want to do. Create an ethics committee, help us achieve this, Joe Public, if you're in the public sector. Inspire an organisation to shift efficiency and effectiveness through using predictive analytics. Go and do it, that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to end on that note.
I think if I was going to take one sentence out of it, it's about understanding that this is a team effort. You're not getting in a single person who's going to solve all your problems and wave a magic wand, no matter how many exciting new bits of kit you give them. It's a team effort, and the more you understand the breadth of thinking in that team, the better the outcome will be for your organization or business.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, I think we'll wrap that up then, so thank you very much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed that little panel. I'll say thank you very much to all our panelists as well.
And for having us. Yeah,
wonderful.
Have a great show.
Points, back up.
Thanks so much.
Adam, great job. Thank you.
Thank you very
Cheers,
much.
Adam.
Thank you very much.
Get back to the bins now.
Thank you. Cheers.